Let me start by making this blood orange marmalade. The first thing I'm doing is segmenting my oranges. Now, when you're making a marmalade, you want the full taste of orange in there, but you don't actually want the membrane of the orange, because that would be tough. And I've used a total of 3 oranges. Now, there's still a lot of juice here, so I'm gonna squeeze that out, and I'll add a 1/2 cup of water, as well as a 1/4 cup of lemon juice. What I like about marmalade is that sort of tart-sweet flavor balance. The other part that you find in marmalade is the bitterness, and that comes from the peel. So I used a vegetable peeler and blanched these strips in boiling water just for a minute. Then I drain them, give them a little rinse, and so I've got orange peel that's going to add flavor to my marmalade, but not over-the-top bitterness. I'm going to bring this up to a simmer and cook it for about 10 minutes, letting it reduce by almost 1/3. So while this simmers away, I can work on this LINZER tart dough. To make the crust, I start with a cup of butter, and I'll add to that 3/4 cup of sugar, and beat that until it's smooth. There we go. Give the side of my bowl a little scrape. And now I'm ready for my eggs. 1 whole egg and 1 egg yolk. Give that a little mix and then add the yolk. Now it's time for the vanilla. And I'm ready for the dry ingredients. A LINZER tart has a top and bottom that's a pastry crust. Cake and pastry flour helps build in the tenderness. 2 cups. And I add to this a teaspoon of baking powder. For a little flavor, I add 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, and then 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So that sweet marmalade will be balanced with a little bit of this salt. Give that a quick little sift. Here we go. I'll add my flour all at once, and then mix it until it's combined. Part of a defining characteristic of a LINZER tart is adding ground nuts to the pastry. It could be hazelnuts, but almonds are traditional, so I'm adding a cup. And the last ingredient to add may sound a little kooky, but it too is characteristic of a LINZER tart. Adding either dry breadcrumbs or, in my case, graham cracker crumbs. Just 3 tablespoons helps to create this texture that just absolutely melts away. Almost shortbread-like in its consistency. This dough is too soft to roll right now, so I need to give it time to chill down, at least 2 hours. But you know what? With a dough like this, you can make it days ahead and then pop it in the freezer. Just thaw it in the refrigerator before you want to roll it. I'll let this chill down, and then it's time to check on that marmalade. Does it smell good? And you really can see how the orange segments have broken right down. I'm gonna reduce the heat and add the sugar. 2 cups. Give this a little stir. Now that my marmalade has reached a full simmer, I can add my pectin, 85 ml. And lastly, a teaspoon of vanilla. Ready to get this into my jar. And I notice this marmalade is already starting to set up. Sometimes marmalade takes 5 minutes to set. Sometimes it can take a week to set up. So be patient. And now I get to put the two together and finish this dessert. I'm gonna start by rolling my LINZER dough. It's nicely chilled now, so quite firm. I'll give my work surface a little sprinkle, and a little sprinkle of flour on my fluted tart tin. And this is the classic pan to use when you're making a LINZER tart. I'm gonna knead the dough just a few seconds, just to make it a little bit easier to roll. and that way it won't crack. I'll roll this out into a circle. Now, if I were rolling out pastry for a chocolate tart or a lemon tart, I would roll it to about 1/4 inch thick. But because it's really all about this beautiful pastry, I actually roll it a little thicker. And I'll lift this and place it into my tart shell, gently pressing it into the edges. I'm gonna use my rolling pin to clean it up. There we go. I like to give the marmalade a little stir just to soften it up. Makes it easier to spread. And I'm gonna put about 1.25 cups in there, but you know what, if a little extra gets in, that's fine. And I'll spread this in an even layer right to the edges, as level as you can get it. Now it's time to roll out the top layer. And this, traditional to a Linzer tart, is a lattice top. That way you can actually see the marmalade peeking through in between the weaves of the dough. So I'll do the same thing, soften it up a little bit. I'll give my work surface a little sprinkle, and I roll this out to the same thickness as the bottom layer. As I'm rolling, I just keep turning and rotating the dough. There we go. Now, to create the lattice pattern, you need a pastry wheel. I like to use a fluted edge, and you need to create 8 strips. They'll be about 1.5 inches across, rather wide. And you want to lay 4 across horizontally first. Just loosely lay them down. Don't press them into the jam. And to create the lattice, first, lift back 2 of the strips on one side, lay one across, and return them back over, and then go the other direction with the other 2 strips. Give it a little press. I use my rolling pin again to roll over top. And to add a final bit of shine and promote a nice even browning, I brush the top of the Linzer tart with an egg wash. But I do take care not to paint over the marmalade. And now I'm all set for the oven, which I've preheated to 350, and this takes about 45 minutes to bake. You will see that as it bakes, it does turn a rich golden brown. Oh, would you look at that? I love how it puffs up. I'm gonna let this cool. You could serve this with a dollop of whipped cream, a little creme fraiche, maybe even a scoop of ice cream, but it's just as delicious on its own. And actually, that's how I prefer it. It slices just so easily. Oh, look at that. You can even see the threads of the blood orange peel throughout. Just absolutely glistens and glows inside that almond pastry. But really, it's all about that blood orange marmalade. All-time favorite.